In early 2025, the Trump administration shocked the world by imposing a sweeping 25% tariff on all imports from Canada and Mexico, upending decades of North American trade. The announcement sent immediate shockwaves through global markets, as investors and businesses scrambled to assess the impact of such a sudden and far-reaching move. For many, it was a moment that signaled a dramatic shift in the rules of international commerce. This blanket action ignored the USMCA, the very agreement meant to ensure stable trade, and blindsided industries on both sides of the border. Companies that had relied on the predictability of the agreement now faced a new era of uncertainty, with supply chains and business models thrown into disarray overnight. The administration quickly doubled down, adding another 25% tariff on cars, steel, aluminum, and auto parts from Canada, striking at the heart of the integrated North American supply chain. These industries, deeply interconnected across borders, suddenly faced massive new costs and logistical nightmares, threatening thousands of jobs and billions in trade. Manufacturers and workers faced chaos as cross-border production ground to a halt. Plants that once operated seamlessly now struggled with shortages, delays, and mounting losses, leaving entire communities anxious about their economic future. The White House claimed it was protecting American jobs, but many saw it as economic aggression, not enforcement. Critics argued that the tariffs risked sparking a trade war with the potential to damage American businesses just as much as their Canadian counterparts. The move triggered an immediate crisis for Canadian businesses and government, threatening the foundation of their economic relationship with the U.S. Leaders in Ottawa scrambled to respond, holding emergency meetings and seeking support from allies around the world. Orders were paused, contracts thrown into doubt, and uncertainty swept across the continent. Companies large and small were forced to reconsider investments, hiring, and even their long-term survival. For the first time in modern history, the U.S. treated Canada as an adversary, not an ally. The sense of partnership that had defined decades of cooperation was replaced by suspicion and tension. This aggressive opening set the stage for a dramatic confrontation, forcing Canada to respond to its biggest economic challenge in a generation. The world watched closely, knowing that the outcome would reshape the future of North American trade for years to come. Canada struck back hard, refusing to be bullied by its powerful neighbor to the south. The country's response was swift, calculated, and designed to send a clear message to Washington and the world. Prime Minister Trudeau's government announced $22 billion in retaliatory tariffs, targeting a wide range of U.S. goods, from steel and aluminum to everyday consumer products. These tariffs were carefully chosen to hit politically sensitive sectors, putting pressure on American lawmakers and businesses alike. The message was unmistakable. Canada would defend its interests with real economic firepower, showing it would not back down in the face of aggressive trade tactics. The stakes escalated even further when Mark Carney, the respected former central banker, became Prime Minister. He promised an even tougher stance, vowing to protect Canadian jobs and industries at all costs. Carney added another $5.7 billion in tariffs, including a dramatic 25% levy on American-made cars, a direct blow to the U.S. auto industry, and a move that sent shockwaves through North American supply chains. Canada's total retaliation swelled to nearly $28 billion, signaling unity and resolve among Canadians from coast to coast. The country stood together, determined to weather the storm. The world's two largest trading partners were now locked in a full-blown economic conflict, with billions in commerce and millions of jobs on both sides of the border suddenly at risk. Carney's government made it clear, Canada would absorb the pain if necessary, but it would also make sure to inflict it in return, determined to stand its ground. The stage was set for a protracted, damaging dispute that would test the strength, resilience, and leadership of both economies for months, if not years, to come. The trade war triggered a political earthquake in Canada. Under mounting pressure, Prime Minister Trudeau resigned, unable to navigate the crisis. Mark Carney, with global financial credibility, took over the Liberal Party and became the face of Canadian resistance. Carney reframed the conflict as a fight for Canadian sovereignty, not just a trade dispute. A snap election in spring 2025 became a referendum on how to handle Trump's America. Carney's message of strength and defiance resonated with voters who felt betrayed by their closest ally. Canadians handed Carney a decisive victory, endorsing his tough stance. The new government solidified Canada's position, keeping retaliatory tariffs firmly in place. With a fresh mandate, and a leader known for resolve, Canada dug in for a long economic fight. The political landscape was fundamentally reshaped, with resistance over accommodation now the national path. The trade war's impact quickly hit factory floors and shopping aisles. U.S. giants like General Motors warned that tariffs would cost billions and threaten American jobs, as the integrated auto supply chain faltered. The pain spread. Canadian tourism to the U.S. plummeted, hurting border businesses and retailers. With Canada making up 14% of U.S. trade, the disruption rippled across agriculture, manufacturing, and retail. In Canada, a patriotic Buy Canadian movement surged, with consumers boycotting U.S. goods and retailers promoting local products. Despite fears, Canadian inflation remained low, as shoppers found alternatives and supply chains adapted. This resilience strengthened Carney's hand, allowing him to maintain a hardline stance without major backlash. The economic battlefield was complex, with both sides suffering unexpected consequences. The trade war was no longer just policy, it was personal for millions. By late summer 2025, Canada made a surprising move to ease tensions that had been simmering for months between Ottawa and Washington. Prime Minister Carney announced the end of 25% tariffs on $21.7 billion in U.S. consumer goods, items like orange juice, wine, and clothing. These tariffs had been a point of frustration for both Canadian shoppers and American exporters. The rollback provided immediate relief to Canadian households, lowering prices on everyday goods, and extended an olive branch to U.S. producers who had been feeling the pinch. Framed as a gesture of goodwill, it aimed to lower the temperature and open the door to renewed diplomacy between the two countries. The timing was strategic, coming just ahead of a critical USMCA review, positioning Canada as the reasonable and proactive party in the ongoing trade dispute. Carney and Trump spoke directly before the announcement, hinting at a fragile diplomatic dance and the importance of personal diplomacy at the highest level. Crucially, Canada kept heavy tariffs on U.S. steel, aluminum, and cars, core industries at the heart of the dispute, signaling that Canada was not giving up its most powerful bargaining chips. The de-escalation was partial and calculated, not a surrender. It was a move designed to show flexibility without sacrificing leverage. Carney's move eased consumer pain, invited dialogue, and kept Canada's strongest leverage in reserve, setting the stage for the next round of negotiations. The ball was now in Washington's court, with the world watching to see how the U.S. would respond to Canada's calculated overture. The White House's response to Canada's olive branch was cold and combative. President Trump claimed vindication, framing Canada's move as overdue, not generous. Instead of reciprocating, the U.S. doubled down, raising tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum to 50% and increasing so-called fentanyl tariffs. Canada, in a calculated shift, chose not to retaliate, hoping to break the cycle of escalation. Carney's restraint aimed to highlight U.S. aggression and position Canada as the reasonable actor. Trump's administration took credit for Canada's rollback while inflicting more economic pain. The diplomatic environment grew more volatile, with the U.S. showing no sign of backing down. The trade war was far from over, and the path forward remained tense and uncertain. By autumn 2025, the U.S.-Canada trade war had settled into an uneasy truce, not true peace. Canada's rollback of consumer tariffs brought relief, but core levies on U.S. steel, aluminum, and cars remained. The U.S. refused to reciprocate, keeping punishing tariffs in place and sharpening its economic sword. The relationship was fragile, with the risk of renewed conflict looming over the upcoming USMCA review. Economic scars ran deep. U.S. companies counted losses, Canadian supply chains shifted, and trust was eroded. The Buy Canadian movement and search for new suppliers began to reshape trade for good. Businesses now factored political risk into dealings with the U.S., once unthinkable in such a stable partnership. The future remained uncertain, with billions in trade and millions of livelihoods hanging in the balance between diplomacy and continued economic warfare.